Imagine shrinking down the highly sensitive personal data of like 500 million Americans until it fits comfortably right into your front pocket.
Right, just totally condensing it.
Exactly. And then, without triggering a single alarm, you just walk straight out the front door of a highly secure government facility.
Wow.
Yeah, no advanced cloud hacking required. No multi-million dollar zero-day exploits deployed. Just, a piece of plastic hardware and a brazen exit.
It's almost too simple to believe, right?
Right. And welcome to today's deep dive, especially to you, our resident learner listening in. Our mission today is to, well, make sense of this massive, glaring contradiction in modern technology.
Yeah, because we are tracking this arms race where the perimeter of the battlefield has entirely dissolved, honestly.
Totally. As cyber attacks evolve into these incredibly fast, complex, machine speed operations, the most devastating breaches often come down to absurdly simple human failures.
Yeah, the speed of engagement is shifting way faster than most organizations can even map their own networks.
So true. We've got a thick stack of recent security intelligence from the Register to synthesize for you today. And we are pairing that raw threat intel with a really fascinating technical breakdown of an automated endpoint recovery solution called Swimmage.
Which is such an interesting contrast.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're tracking the complete spectrum of the modern threat landscape here, from spoofed web portals bypassing billion-dollar defenses to AI swarms actively fighting each other in the cloud, all the way to the ultimate fallback tools that can rebuild a completely bricked network offline in just a matter of minutes. Okay, let's unpack this.
So we have to establish the current baseline of compromise first. Before we get into artificial intelligence launching autonomous attacks against corporate infrastructure, we really need to look at how threat actors are getting in today.
Right, the basics.
Exactly. The human element remains the path of absolute least resistance. What's fascinating here is despite millions spent on enterprise security, the most effective vector is still just tricking a tired employee.
Oh, absolutely. Like, let's talk about the Starbucks breach around February 6th. Attackers got in and scraped the social security numbers, dates of birth, and financial routing data of nearly 900 employees, or partners, as Starbucks calls them.
Right, they're partners. And they didn't burn a sophisticated zero-day vulnerability to get into the HR servers for that, did they?
Nope, not at all. They simply spoofed the Partner Central portal. It's basically the equivalent of someone putting a fake, identical front door right in front of your real house.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and you just hand them your keys without even realizing you aren't home yet.
It completely exposes a fundamental flaw in how we approach perimeter defense. You have global enterprises deploying state-of-the-art endpoint detection, hardware security keys, complex firewall.
All the expensive stuff.
Right. Yet a threat actor simply registers a lookalike domain, scrapes the CSS and HTML of the legitimate sign-on page, and just waits. It circumvents the technical perimeter by exploiting the identity gateway itself.
Which highlights why zero trust is becoming absolutely mandatory. You can't just rely on a correct username and password anymore. If the system doesn't cryptographically verify the device health, the location, the session context.
Those stolen credentials are just a skeleton key.
Exactly. And the operational fallout from these human-level exploits is staggering, even when the data stolen isn't highly classified. Take the recent breach at Loblaw, the Canadian retail giant.
Oh yeah, that was
It's
massive.
huge. They operate thousands of grocery and pharmacy locations. They suffered what they called a low-level breach. Names, emails, phone numbers, nothing like credit cards or health records.
The response was huge.
Right. To secure the network and contain the lateral movement, they auto-logged out 18 million PC Optum members.
Wow. 18 million.
Yeah, and forcing 18 million users to re-authenticate is not just flipping a switch on a dashboard. The compute cost is a nightmare. You're broadcasting a revocation list across a global content delivery network, rotating cryptographic keys, setting up aggressive API rate limiting so your servers don't literally melt down.
Because you have millions of people simultaneously requesting password reset emails.
Exactly.
It perfectly illustrates the blast radius we're talking about. A simple spoof portal on the front end forces this catastrophic infrastructure-wide reset on the back end.
And that blast radius extends exponentially when we move from individual employee accounts to the massive third-party vendors these companies rely on.
The supply chain.
Exactly. Look at TELUS Digital, a massive Canadian IT outsourcer. They just got hit. The Shiny Hunters gang allegedly walked away with a petabyte of data.
A full petabyte. That is a staggering amount of data to exfiltrate.
It really is, and what's crucial to understand here is the mechanism. They apparently used valid Google Cloud Platform credentials that they got from a totally separate breach at a company called SalesLoft.
Right, this is the grim reality of the daisy-chained cloud environment. Modern organizations integrate with dozens of SaaS providers using OES tokens, API keys, delegated permissions.
They're all connected.
Totally. SalesLoft uses service accounts to interface with Google Cloud. If an attacker extracts the JSON key for that service account during a breach, they inherit its permissions. They don't need to break into TELUS. They authenticate into TELUS using the pre-approved trust granted to SalesLoft.
And exfiltrating a petabyte of data without tripping alarms. You don't just download that over a weekend connection.
Oh, no way.
Right. They likely had to slow drip the exfiltration, chunk the data, disguise it as automated backup traffic, route it through trusted IPs. By the time the Security Operations Center notices the anomaly, the data is already on a server in another jurisdiction.
And this interconnected fragility is driving an acute panic at the CISO level right now. Which brings us to the cloud software group. They own Citrix.
Right.
Their Chief Information Security Officer, Kumar Palaniappan, just sent out an incredibly urgent, blaring warning to customers. He cited the evolving geopolitical landscape and a massive spike in state-sponsored advanced persistent threats. Yes, and zero-day exploits. His directive was incredibly blunt.
Yeah.
Patch immediately and absolutely ensure you are running supported versions of Citrix products.
Okay, so I read that memo, and part of me is, frankly, highly skeptical.
How so?
Well, I mean, is this genuine geopolitical threat intelligence, or is the CISO partly leaning on fear as a revenue generation tactic? It reads a bit like, the state-sponsored hackers are coming, so you better make sure you've bought our newest, most expensive enterprise licenses right now.
Yeah, that skepticism is totally warranted anytime a software vendor ties your security posture to their upgrade cycle. I completely get that.
It's convenient for them.
Right, very convenient. But from a purely architectural standpoint, legacy, unsupported systems are the exact foothold these advanced persistent threats are looking for.
Really, not the new stuff.
Right. State-sponsored actors rarely burn $1 million zero-day exploit on a hardened modern server if they don't have to. They scan the supply chain for a forgotten, unpatched appliance sitting in a vendor's environment.
Ah, because those legacy systems lack modern telemetry.
Exactly. They lack modern endpoint detection agents.
Yeah.
They are silent dark spots on a network. So while Citrix certainly benefits financially from the upgrades, running unsupported software in a connected supply chain basically leaves an invisible, unmonitored backdoor wide open. Your vulnerability instantly becomes your partner's vulnerability.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've covered front-end deception with Starbucks and interconnected supply chains with Citrix and TELUS, but the most devastating vector often ignores the digital perimeter entirely.
The physical insider threat.
Exactly. And real quick, before we dive into this next example, I want to be crystal clear with our listener. We are strictly impartial here. Regardless of where anyone stands on the politics of Elon Musk or the now shuttered Department of Government Efficiency or DOGE initiative,
Wow.
we are not taking sides. The focus here is strictly on the staggering scale of the alleged data vulnerability they uncovered.
Right. The mechanics of how this data was supposedly handled expose a massive gap in traditional enterprise security thinking.
So the Social Security Administration's Inspector General is currently investigating a software engineer who formerly worked at DOGE. This engineer allegedly accessed restricted databases and copied the data of 500 million Americans, including SSNs, citizenship statuses, and ethnicities, onto a physical thumb drive.
500 million people on a thumb drive.
Yeah, and he allegedly took that drive to a new job at a U.S. government contractor. Now, both his new employer and DOGE representatives vigorously deny the claims, but strictly examining the hypothetical mechanics here. I mean, we talk so much about complex cloud hacks, but how is it that in 2026, the data of 500 million Americans could theoretically just walk out the front door on a piece of plastic?
It reveals a total failure in managing data states.
Yeah.
We heavily prioritize data in motion, encrypting traffic with TLS, monitoring network packets, securing the cloud perimeter.
Right, the pipes.
Exactly. But this is a failure of securing data at rest at the physical endpoint level. Traditional data loss prevention, or DLP tools, are often configured just to flag anomalies.
Just observing.
Yeah. If they aren't embedded at the kernel level to physically block the USB port from mounting unauthorized storage devices, the software is basically just watching the robbery happen in real time.
It's astonishing that an organization could possess sensitive data on 500 million people, but lack an automated policy that says, hey, do not allow data transfers over 100 megabytes to unencrypted, unregistered external hardware.
Right.
I mean, if your DLP software is just sending a delayed alert to a dashboard while the transfer is actively happening, human reaction time is infinitely too slow to stop the exfiltration.
Because human policy enforcement fundamentally cannot scale. You cannot rely on a human analyst to spat a spoofed identity portal in real time. You can't manually track every OAuth token in a sprawling cloud supply chain, and you certainly can't rely on oversight to catch a malicious insider plugging in a thumb drive.
There's just too much noise.
The volume of telemetry is too vast, and the speed of the compromise totally outpaces manual triage.
Which forces the entire cybersecurity industry into a massive paradigm shift. If manual human defense is failing against phishing, supply chains, and insiders, how do we defend networks?
We remove the human.
Exactly. The answer being funded right now is removing the human from the defense equation entirely. We are officially entering the era of machine speed defense. Kevin Mandia, who previously sold his incident response firm Mandiant to Google for $5.4 billion, he just raised almost $190 million for his new venture, Armaden.
That's the highest seed and Series A funding round in cybersecurity history, right?
It is. He's betting nearly $200 million that the future of enterprise defense must be completely autonomous. Mandia argues we are facing AI-powered hyperattacks. These are multimodal, highly sophisticated threats moving at machine speed.
Because human analysts physically cannot click a mouse fast enough to triage the alerts, let alone isolate the breach.
Exactly. Here's where it gets really interesting. Armaden's solution is to deploy AI agents inside a customer's environment as an agentic attacker swarm. Yeah, instead of thinking of it like a human guard patrolling a fence, it's more like releasing a swarm of friendly Terminators into your own house to aggressively test your windows and doors before the real bad guys show up.
That is a fascinating philosophical shift Mandia is proposing. The technical mechanics of an agentic swarm fundamentally change how vulnerability management works.
How so?
Well, traditionally, a company runs a vulnerability scan once a week, generates this massive PBS report, and human engineers patch the critical issues over the next month.
Right, very slow.
But Armaden's AI agents operate with privileged access, constantly fuzzing internal APIs. They're injecting malformed data payloads into internal microservices to see if they crash. They're testing configuration drifts and discovering novel attack paths in real time.
So they aren't just finding the open doors, they are actively trying to chain low-level vulnerabilities together, just like a human red team would, but doing it thousands of times a second?
Exactly. Mandia specifically stated, we can no longer afford to have a human in the loop for every defense decision and expect to win. If the swarm discovers a vulnerability, it autonomously alters the network policy or pushes a dynamic firewall rule to close it.
We basically have to trust the machines to police the machines.
Which is a terrifying prospect for a traditional system administrator.
Yeah.
You are trusting an AI agent to aggressively alter your live production environment.
But the alternative is what?
Right. The alternative is relying on a human analyst who is asleep when a state-sponsored AI script launches an attack at 3:00 a.m. It's just no longer a mathematically viable strategy.
So we have AI attacking and AI defending. Let's follow that logic to its inevitable conclusion. What happens when the defense inevitably fails?
Because it will.
Right. An autonomous AI attacker finds a zero-day exploit before the defensive swarm does, or a system is totally bricked by ransomware. When the digital walls collapse and the systems are locked, you need an automated way to resurrect the hardware instantly.
You absolutely need a disaster recovery protocol that doesn't rely on the very network infrastructure that was just compromised. I mean, if your imaging tools require an active connection to your central deployment server, and that central server is encrypted by ransomware,
Yeah.
you are completely dead in the water.
Exactly. Which brings us to Swimage. We looked into this automated endpoint management and disaster recovery solution. Their entire value proposition is recovering systems from catastrophic failure in under 30 minutes.
Under 30 minutes?
Yeah. They claim to completely eradicate deep-rooted malware and ransomware, preserve all user data and local settings, and do it with zero touch. and prices start at just $4 a seat.
That's incredibly accessible.
Right. There was this case study where a CTO at a federal agency used this platform to replace 5,000 PCs in 3 months. And a nonprofit IT director had a major emergency and deployed 60 computers in 2 hours, working completely alone.
The speed of the deployment is definitely impressive, but the architectural differentiator is how they achieve it, particularly in offline scenarios.
Right. That was the crucial mechanical question I had. Wait, if a computer is completely bricked, or the company has physically severed the network cables to stop a worm from spreading laterally, how does Swimage fix it offline? How does it rebuild a machine without pinging a central server to download a massive operating system image?
Well, they bypass the network dependency entirely. They embed the complete recovery environment, the pristine OS, the hardware drivers, the security configurations, and the encryption keys into a self-contained deployment kit.
Ah.
Yeah, this kit lives locally on the device, often in a hidden protected local partition, or it can be initiated via a physical USB drive.
So all the intelligence and the payload are already pushed to the absolute edge of the network.
Exactly. When a device is compromised, Swimage essentially quarantines the hardware at the BIOS level. It doesn't even attempt to clean the infected operating system. It bypasses it entirely.
Just ignores it.
All right, it takes a secure, encrypted snapshot of the user's local data, physically wipes the drive to eradicate rootkits or malware at the sector level, and lays down a fresh cryptographic foundation using that embedded local kit.
So it reinstalls the clean OS, applies the corporate security policies, and restores the user data all locally without pulling a single megabyte over the network.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly aligns with the zero trust architecture we discussed earlier.
Oh, so?
Because before that newly rebuilt machine is allowed to request an IP address or rejoin the corporate domain, it has to cryptographically prove to the network that it is clean, fully patched, and compliant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it generates a secure hash of the newly installed system state and cross-references it with the domain controller. It perfectly closes the loop on those vulnerabilities we discussed with legacy systems and insider threats. You're guaranteed a pristine endpoint in 30 minutes without ever exposing the wider network to risk during the rebuild process.
Zooming out to look at the whole board, the trajectory of modern IT defense is unmistakable. We're moving from an era of manual IT defense, where a spoofed portal at Starbucks, a stolen OAuth token at SalesLoft, or a rogue thumb drive can trigger a chaotic, human-led scramble to an era of autonomous AI swarms and zero-touch, offline system resurrections.
The human element is systematically being engineered out of the loop, both in how we detect the intrusion and how we recover from the fallout.
So what does this all mean?
Well, I think it leaves us with a really provocative question to mull over. If we are entering a world where AI agents launch hyper-attacks, AI swarms autonomously defend against them, and tools like Swimage automatically rebuild the casualties in 30 minutes without human intervention, what is the future role of the human IT worker?
That is the big question.
Are we just becoming bystanders in a digital war fought entirely by machines? We finally built the impenetrable fortress, but we handed the keys over to an algorithm that might just lock us all out for our own good.
Incredible. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive to our favorite learner out there. Keep questioning the systems running silently in the background. And as always, stay curious.